the Omega they cast aside. Snow fell over the northern pack lands the night they left her at the gates. Not exiled with ceremony. Not marked with shame rituals or public condemnation. Just left. A single torch. A folded blanket. And silence. Mira had been an Omega since birth. The lowest rank in a hierarchy built on strength, on bloodlines, on the golden shimmer of an alpha's aura. She had never been beaten. Never been starved. But she had been overlooked so completely, for so long, that when her mate rejection came, no one in the pack even turned to watch. Alpha Daemon rejected her in front of the entire hall. "I deserve a mate worthy of my bloodline," he had said. "Not an Omega who trembles at the sound of thunder." The pack had laughed. Not cruelly, just easily. The way people laugh at something they've already decided doesn't matter. Mira didn't cry that night either. She had learned, long before that moment, that tears were currency she couldn't afford to spend twice. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. She walked for 3 days after the rejection. Not toward another pack. Not toward vengeance. Just away. On the third night, half frozen beneath a collapsed pine, she heard it. A cry. Small. Weak. Almost swallowed by the wind. She followed the sound through knee-deep snow until she found him. An infant, wrapped in a soldier's cloak, abandoned at the base of a shattered stone marker. No parents nearby. No tracks leading away except one set, running. Mira lifted the child into her arms. He stopped crying the moment she held him. She didn't know his name. She didn't know his bloodline. She only knew that somewhere, someone had left him the same way her own pack had left her. Deciding, without asking him, that he wasn't worth the risk of staying. "I don't have much," she whispered into the cold. "But I have this. I won't leave you the way I was left." She named him Kale, after her grandmother's favorite constellation, the wolf that never set. What Mira didn't know, what no one in the frozen north knew that night, was that the soldier's cloak wrapping the child bore a crest hidden beneath layers of frost and blood. A crest belonging to the sovereign line, the bloodline said to unite every werewolf kingdom under a single crown once every 100 years. The child in her arms wasn't abandoned by accident. He was hidden, on purpose, by someone desperate enough to trade a crown for a heartbeat. 5 years later, the village of Ashwick sat at the edge of the neutral territories, far from any kingdom's banners. It was the kind of place Pax forgot existed, which was exactly why Mira had chosen it. She works as a healer now, not because anyone had trained her, because necessity had. Kale grew up believing his mother was simply Mira. Quiet, steady, endlessly patient. He didn't know the word Omega. He didn't know what rejection meant. He only knew that when nightmares came, she never once told him to be quieter about his fear. But children, even hidden ones, cannot stay hidden forever. One spring morning, 3 riders crossed into Ashwick. Their horses bore no crest. Their cloaks bore no color. But their eyes moved with the precision of men who had been trained to search, not to travel. Mira noticed them before anyone else did. She always noticed things others missed. It was, perhaps, the only gift her years as an overlooked Omega had given her, the ability to see what people assumed no one was watching closely enough to catch. She pulled Kale inside before the strangers reached the market square. "Mama," he asked, "why are we hiding?" She knelt to his level, the way she always did when the truth mattered more than comfort. "Because sometimes, sweetheart, the world notices people before they're ready to be noticed." That night she packed a single bag, not because she knew who the strangers were, because she had learned, long ago, that safety was never something you waited to lose. It was something you left before it could be taken. Far to the east, in the capital of the sovereign kingdom, a war council argued beneath torches that had burned for 5 days straight without pause. "The bloodline cannot remain lost," said Chancellor Reyes, oldest of the surviving council. "If the child is not found before his 6th naming day, the crown passes to the regent's line permanently." And the regent. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Everyone in the room understood what the regent had done to claim his current power. They understood what he would do to keep it. Commander Ashen Voss stood at the edge of the chamber, arms crossed, silent through most of the council's shouting. He was the only person in the room who had actually seen the child the night he vanished. He was also the only person who had lied, 5 years ago, about how the boy disappeared. He had told the regent the infant had died in the mountain collapse. He had told himself the same lie so many times that some nights he almost believed it. But the soldier's cloak he'd wrapped around the child before leaving him at the frozen shrine, that cloak had never truly left his memory. Neither had the choice he made that night, trading his loyalty to a dying king for the life of an infant heir no one else wanted to protect. "I know where to start looking," Voss finally said. The council turned toward him. "Where?" Reyes asked. Voss's jaw tightened. "Somewhere no one thought to search. Somewhere small enough to be forgotten. The hunter who remembers." 3 weeks later, Mira and Kale arrived in a coastal town called Brindlemere, a place of fishing boats and quiet markets, far enough from any pack territory that even rumors traveled slowly. She thought, for the first time in months, that they might finally rest. She was wrong. On the evening of their second week, a man sat alone at the edge of the harbor, sharpening a blade that had clearly seen more war than the town itself had ever witnessed. He didn't wear a uniform. He didn't carry a banner. But something about the way he watched the street, patient, deliberate, searching, made Myra's instincts rise like a held breath. She kept Kale close as they passed. The stranger's eyes lingered. Not on her. On the boy. That night, Mira didn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching shadows shift along the rooftops, waiting for a threat that hadn't yet announced itself but had clearly already arrived. Near midnight, a knock came. Soft, deliberate. Not the knock of someone trying to break in. The knock of someone trying not to be heard by anyone except her. She opened the door with a blade hidden behind her back. The stranger from the harbor stood there, hood lowered, hands raised in open surrender. "I'm not here to hurt him," he said quietly. "I'm here because I'm the reason he's still alive." Before we continue, if this story has you holding your breath already, type, "I'm watching" in the comments so we know you're still with us. Mira didn't lower the blade. "Explain," she said. Quickly. The stranger Voss told her everything. The night of the mountain collapse. The bloodline hidden beneath the soldier's cloak. The regent, who now ruled a kingdom built on a lie, was 5 years old. Mira listened without interrupting. When he finished, she asked only one question. "Why come now?" Voss's expression darkened, though not with menace, with something closer to grief. "Because the regent's spies found the trail before I did. If I found you first, it's only because I've spent 5 years searching harder than they have." Myra's hand tightened around the knife. "And if I refuse to hand him over, then I'll help you disappear again," Voss said simply. "I'm not here for the crown. I'm here because I made a promise to a dying king, and I intend to keep it, whether the boy ever wears that crown or not." Mira studied him the way she studied every stranger who claimed honesty. Carefully, patiently, waiting to see if his actions would eventually contradict his words. "You'll sleep in the barn," she finally said. "Not the house." It wasn't trust, but it was a beginning. The regent's reach. Far across the kingdom, in a war room built from stolen banners and reforged crowns, the regent, a broad-shouldered alpha named Cashin Thorn, listened to reports with growing frustration. "Voss has gone silent," his spymaster reported. "No contact in 3 weeks. Cashin's claws extended briefly before retracting, a habit he'd never fully mastered controlling. "He's found something," Cashin said. "Or someone. Should we intercept him?" Cashin considered the question for a long moment. "No," he finally said. "Let him lead us to the boy himself. Men who believe they're protecting a secret rarely notice they're being followed." He turned toward the window overlooking the capital, a kingdom he had ruled in the missing heir's name for 5 years, a kingdom that had begun, quietly, to ask uncomfortable questions about why the true bloodline had never been found. If the boy surfaced now, everything Cashin had built could collapse in a single season. He would not allow that. Not after everything he had sacrificed to take this throne. Not after everything he had buried to keep it. A boy who doesn't yet know his worth. Cale, unaware of empires shifting around him, spent his days the way any 5-year-old might. Chasing gulls along the harbor, learning to mend fishing nets, listening to Voss's stories about wolves larger than houses and mountains that touched the stars. He liked Voss in the uncomplicated way children like adults who treat them as capable rather than fragile. "Is it true you fought a bear once?" Cale asked one afternoon. Voss chuckled. "Once. It nearly won. Would you fight one again?" "For me." Voss knelt to the boy's eye level, an unfamiliar warmth breaking through his usually guarded expression. "I'd fight anything for you," he said. "Bears included." Mira watched the exchange from the doorway, her chest tightening with an emotion she hadn't expected. Not suspicion, not fear, but something dangerously close to hope. She had spent 5 years believing safety meant isolation. Watching Voss with Cale, she began to wonder, for the first time, if safety might also mean allies. The trap closes. It happened on a foggy morning, exactly 1 month after Voss's arrival. 6 riders entered Brindlemere at dawn, moving with the same unnatural quiet Voss himself had once used to search the town undetected. Mira recognized the formation instantly, trained hunters, not soldiers. Men sent not to announce a claim, but to seize one quietly. She grabbed Cale before the first horse reached the market square. Voss met her at the door, already armed. "They found us," he said grimly. "How?" "It doesn't matter now. What matters is getting him out." Myra's mind raced through every escape route she'd memorized since arriving in the town. The fishing docks, the Eastern Forest Trail, the old smugglers' tunnels beneath the harbor warehouses. "The tunnels," she said. "Now." They moved quickly. Cale held tightly against Myra's chest, Voss guarding the rear with blade drawn. The tunnels beneath Brindlemere had been carved centuries ago by traders avoiding taxation. Long since abandoned, damp, and narrow enough that only a handful of townsfolk still remembered their existence. It was, perhaps, the only reason they made it halfway through undetected. The hunters found the tunnel entrance anyway. Voss turned to face them alone. "Take him and go," he told Mira. "I'll hold them. You'll die." "Maybe," Voss said, his voice steady despite the danger closing in. "But he won't. And that's the only outcome that's ever mattered to me." Mira hesitated only a moment before nodding, pulling Cale deeper into the tunnel's darkness as the sound of steel meeting steel echoed behind her. Please, if you're enjoying this story so far, hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel more than you know and helps other viewers discover these stories too. The fight in the dark. Voss fought with the precision of a man who had spent years preparing for exactly this moment. 6 against 1 should have ended quickly. Didn't. He used the tunnel's narrow walls to his advantage, forcing his opponents into single file, meeting each one with brutal efficiency honed from a lifetime of war. But numbers eventually outlast skill. A blade found his side, then his shoulder. He staggered, blood soaking through leather, vision blurring at the edges. The lead hunter, a scarred veteran named Garrick, stepped over his fallen enemies with slow, deliberate confidence. "You could have handed the boy over quietly," Garrick said. "Cashin would have rewarded loyalty." Voss spat blood onto the tunnel floor. "Cashin doesn't reward loyalty," he rasped. "He rewards silence. There's a difference." Garrick raised his sword for the final blow. It never landed. An arrow buried itself in Garrick's shoulder, spinning him backward with a pained shout. From the tunnel's far entrance, torchlight revealed a dozen armed figures. Townsfolk, fishermen, the very people Voss and Mira had lived quietly among for weeks. At their front stood the town's harbor master, bow still raised. "We don't know what you're hunting," he called out. "But we know a coward's fight when we see one. 6 against 1. Leave. Now." The remaining hunters, wounded and outnumbered by a town they hadn't accounted for, retreated into the fog. Voss collapsed against the tunnel wall, breathing shallow, blood pooling beneath him. Mira emerged from the shadows moments later, Kale held tightly against her side, eyes wide with a fear no child should have to carry. She knelt beside Voss immediately. "Stay with me," she whispered, pressing torn cloth against his wound. "You don't get to die after everything you just risked." Voss managed a weak, pained smile. "Wasn't planning on it," he murmured. "Someone has to teach that boy how to actually fight a bear." The truth Kale deserved. Voss survived the night, though barely. The town's healer, an elderly woman who had outlived 3 wars and buried more soldiers than kings, worked through until dawn to keep him breathing. When he finally woke, Mira sat beside his bed, Kale asleep against her shoulder. "You should have run," Voss whispered. "I did run," Mira said. "For 5 years. I'm tired of running from people who deserve to be fought instead." Voss studied her carefully. "You know what he is now," he said. "What he could become." Mira nodded slowly. "I know what the crown says he is," she replied. "I know what I raised him to be. Those aren't always the same thing." Voss closed his eyes, exhaustion pulling him back towards sleep. "They will be," he murmured. "Eventually. Bloodlines like his don't stay hidden forever." Mira looked down at the sleeping child in her arms, the boy she had found abandoned in the snow, the boy the world had decided was worth killing for, the boy who still believed, as far as she knew, that the greatest danger in his life was nightmares and thunder. "Then I suppose," she whispered, "I'll simply have to make sure he becomes the kind of king worth all this bloodshed. A kingdom waiting to be told the truth." News of the failed capture reached the capital within the week, delivered not by Voss's enemies, but by townsfolk who had begun to whisper the story across trade routes. A hidden child, hunted by masked riders, protected by strangers who asked for nothing in return. Chancellor Reyes heard the rumors first. He requested an audience with the regent that same evening. "The child is alive," Reyes said carefully, watching Cashin's reaction with practiced patience. "The people are already speaking of him as though he's a legend rather than a rumor." Cashin's expression remained unreadable, though his claws once again extended briefly along the edge of his throne. "Legends," he said quietly, "have a habit of becoming inconvenient truths." Reyes chose his next words with deliberate care. "Perhaps, my lord, it's time the kingdom learned the truth on your terms, rather than discovering it on its own." Cashin said nothing for a long moment. Then, quietly, dangerously, he replied, "The truth serves whoever controls it first, Chancellor. I intend to be the one holding it. If you've made it this far into the story, let us know in the comments who you're rooting for. Mira? Voss? Or do you think young Kale has a destiny neither of them can protect him from?" 6 months later. Brindlemere had changed since the night of the tunnel fight. Quietly, without ceremony, the town had begun protecting its newest residents the way a pack protects its most vulnerable member. Not through strength, but through unified silence. Voss recovered slowly, the scars along his side a permanent reminder of a debt he considered far from repaid. Kale grew braver by the season, though gentler too. A boy shaped equally by Myra's patience and Voss's quiet discipline. One evening, as autumn winds swept across the harbor, Kale asked a question that neither adult was fully prepared to answer. "Why do people want to hurt me?" Mira knelt beside him instantly, the same way she always had. "Because some people believe power belongs only to those who take it by force," she said gently. "And they're afraid of what happens if it belongs, instead, to someone who earns it through kindness." Kale frowned, considering this with the seriousness only children manage to summon. "Is that why you found me? Because you wanted to protect kindness?" Myra's eyes filled, though she blinked the emotion back before it could fall. "I found you," she said softly, "because no child deserves to be left in the snow simply because someone decided he wasn't convenient to protect. The rest, the crown, the kingdoms, the bloodlines, none of that ever mattered as much as that first choice." Voss, watching from the doorway, allowed himself, for the first time in years, something dangerously close to peace. He had spent 5 years believing his greatest duty was protecting a bloodline. Watching Mira and Kale together, he finally understood his duty had never been to a crown at all. It had been to the family this hidden king had built, quietly, in a town no map bothered to mark clearly. And whatever the regent sent next, whatever army, whatever lie, whatever desperate grasp for a throne built on borrowed time, Voss intended to make certain that family remained standing. Because kingdoms rise and fall on the decisions of kings. But legacies, the kind that outlast crowns entirely, are built by the people who choose to stay when leaving would have been so much easier. Thank you for staying with us through this story. If Mira, Voss, and young Kale's journey moved you the way we hoped it would, give this video a like, subscribe for more, and turn on notifications so you never miss what happens when the regent finally makes his move. Until next time, remember, the truest kings are never the ones born to a crown. They are the ones who are chosen quietly by the people willing to protect them.